Welcome to episode 166 of Sports Geek. On this week's episode, I chat with Nick Maywald about sports, tech, and stats.
Welcome to Sports Geek, the podcast built for sports digital and sports business professionals.
And now, here's your host, who is available on Jiffy, Sean Callanan.
Thanks, DJ Joel. Yes, my name is Sean Callanan, and you will find me on Giphy. Have you set up a channel for your team on Giphy, making it easier for your teams to share GIFs, especially as GIFs becoming more and more prevalent, available now on Facebook and even on LinkedIn. So get some of those great GIFs of your team and the highlights where your rights allow, obviously. Get them onto Giphy. You are listening to Sports Geek. You're doing that on your favourite podcast platform, and I'm very thankful for those of you who have left a review on iTunes. We are now at 120 reviews worldwide. So thank you very much if you've done that. You can go to sportsgeekhq.com/iTunes. I'm very hopeful that the new iOS updates that are coming through make it a little bit easier. So I do value the fact that you've taken a bit of time, because I know how hard it can be. And have you refreshed your podcast app? You should have new cover art. Nice, bold and yellow with the Sports Geek logo there. And me holding a basketball. So if you want to contact me at any time, you can do that the old-fashioned way. Sean at sportsgeekhq.com will get me. And you can also do it via social media, whether it be on Facebook. Sean Callanan Speaks is my Facebook page, or at Sean Callanan on Twitter, Snapchat, and also in the Sports Biz Slack community if you want to send me a message there. Really happy to be able to have Nick Maywald, who is the Group Managing Director of Genius Sports, formerly known as Sporting Pulse, to come in. He came into the new office here at Creative Cubes to sort of chat about his journey in the sports tech space, and very much on the side of the stats and helping rights holders understand stats and how they can be monetised. So thank you very much for Umberto for setting up the interview. So this is my chat with Nick Maywald from Genius Sports. Here I am. We're recording this on a slightly wet Monday morning here at the new Sports Geek offices in Cremorne. If you are in Richmond, please stop by to the new Creative Cubes office. And I'm joined by Nick Maywald, the Group Managing Director of Genius Sports. Welcome to the podcast, Nick.
Yeah, thank you, Sean. Pleasure to be here.
So, Nick, first of all, just give the listeners a little bit of background. What is Genius Sports and what does it do?
Genius Sports is a sports technology and data distribution business. It really was formed by the coming together of two different organisations. That's the business I founded back in 2000, which was called Sporting Pulse, and also a data distribution and commercialisation business called BetGenius out of London. So today we're very much a sport-facing business. We focus on providing the technology and data distribution and commercialisation needs of sporting organisations. And we'll get into the detail of the depth and breadth of that, I guess, and then obviously helping them commercialise by the smart use of technology and to meet all their other needs, which will...
So it's a pretty broad description to say technology in sports, but to sort of get into a bit of the nitty gritty of it, what were some of the solutions that have come together in the merger of Sporting Pulse and BetGenius?
Yeah, a phrase we use just to sort of go back a little bit, a lot within the business is looking after sport on and off the field.
Yep.
So by providing technology solutions that really help in the everything from performance and analytics through to their competition management, the way they run the organisation, whether that be a league or a federation, through to how they engage with fans and how they look after the needs and wants of fans, I guess, and then through to commercial aspects. So the coming together of the two organisations was a real opportunity for us to cover that breadth of requirements, but it's all really hinges around the explosion in the capture, distribution and use, in particular use, of sports data, and in particular live in-play statistics and everything that may involve, from wearables through tracking, through the traditional play-by-play type statistics, and how all of that data comes together to form different insights for all the different personas of people involved in sport.
Because we've really moved from, stats have been a long time staple of sports. We've got people who still go to the baseball and mark off their sheets, and it's been a long time staple of other sports like basketball. But now, as digital has risen, more people are wanting to get access to those stats, in that live time environment, and that's pretty much what you're looking to do to bridge that gap.
Yeah, definitely. The live is really key for us, and when we say we're a technology and data business, that's really one of our specialties. Is the capture of real time stats, and when we talk real time, we're talking real time courtside, whether that's through wearables or whether it's through manually inputted stats by people sitting courtside who are involved with the sport. But then we also talk about real time in terms of distribution and the ability to get statistics, whether it's in the well-presented stats in the raw form, I guess, or whether it's consolidated stats or whether it's insights based on stats, the ability to get that to fans, whether that's for betting purposes, whether it's for fan engagement, whether it's for media purposes, whether it's for datainment purposes, whether it's for broadcast through the TV graphics, whatever it might be, to get that distributed in sub 1 second, so it's from a fan's point of view or someone engaging with that data, it's truly real time, I guess.
So your tech has moved from one end to the other. So you've got the systems at one end where the people are either tapping them in on a keyboard or on a smartphone or whatever to say, these are the stats that we're seeing with reporters courtside, to they end up getting presented in a TV graphic, in a mobile app, and put out on data feeds and those kind of things that can be accessed by other apps. Yeah,
definitely. The actual capture of stats, I guess you would say there's no real rocket science in that, although there's more and more science in the capture of it through wearables and tracking systems, obviously. But we see a real specialty of ours, and I guess a differentiator is what we do with that data. So the ability to take that data, do smart things with it, present it in meaningful ways, in different ways, in more entertaining ways, in ways that make sense for bookmakers, in ways that make sense for punters. So, it's very much about having the smarts within the organisation globally now to be able to do things with that data that make sense for the various users or personas or consumers of that data.
And so we've seen very much a growth, in the last 18 months, 2 years, of fantasy and daily fantasy in the States, and it just seems that the appetite for stats, the US market is different with the not big gambling market, but if you look at the global market as a gambling market, how much has the appetite just increased in the last 2 to 3 years?
I think with the rise of digital, full stop, that's increasing the demand for all types of data worldwide, and people's expectation of immediacy, I think, is increasing all the time. In the world of sport, it's no different. I guess the US is, in particular, the key US sports has always been crazy about statistics and very focused on statistics, and there's a high degree of understanding of that. And historically, that's been the case. Obviously, you add digital to that and the different ways to consume and do things with that data and those statistics means it's growing exponentially. Globally in the world of sport, I think we're seeing similar trends. I think you're right in saying Europe probably hasn't had the same degree of attraction. The daily fantasy thing that's really kicked off in the States hasn't. It's done well both here in Australia and a little bit in Europe, but it hasn't taken as big a hold because those markets already are mature gambling markets and people are betting on outcomes, and so hasn't taken as big a hold. But the interest in the stats and the different ways to view the game definitely has grown. Yeah, you mean growing in Europe or other parts of the world?
Just overall as a byproduct of it.
Yeah. There's no doubt it's growing. Even in the betting space, obviously, if the history of online betting or in sport, even pre-online in sports betting, the types of bets have changed all the time, and that's a form of entertainment around sports and the way that sports data is used. And we see a trend whilst people will still take or place a bet on an outcome of a game with basic odds. More and more the trend in sports betting is for it to be in more of an entertainment type product with much smaller bets more frequently and around different types of bets. So those different types of bets typically will rely on live in-play accurate statistics that enable punters to place bets on different things. And I guess that's been seen as well, not just in the betting space, but in the media space, where people, particularly the younger generation, I guess, the ability for organisations, whether that's a media business, whether it's a sport, or whether it's a bookmaker, to capture the attention of the younger generation of fans is becoming more and more difficult. So the ability to use data in a more sophisticated way, in a smarter way, to catch their attention and make it more interesting in a very competitive landscape is becoming really important. And I think that's also part of the virtuous circle of what's going on in the increasing data, increasing distribution, increasing devices.
And that's that gamification of the game itself, where people are going, I have no interest in this game, but if I'm following them from a stats point of view and I've picked my winners, and again, all these different forms, it's a way to get them in on these micro involvements and mini games within games.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. I mean, there's been studies done around the world in terms of with things like fantasy and the gamification, and there is zero doubt that a consumer or a fan's knowledge of different players and of different teams increases considerably when they're involved in that type of entertainment. Yeah,
definitely. And if you look back at some of the the Game Centre StatsCast type things that you would have had out in the market 7 or 8 years ago, they would have all been on the desktop with the stats coming through, with play-by-play, maybe shot charts coming up. How has that changed as the traffic has moved away from the desktop to the mobile? How do you try to condense that experience and make that useful in the mobile, even though the mobiles are getting bigger? How do you make that useful in a mobile experience?
Yeah, I guess the mobiles are getting bigger, but the screens are still small. The definition is getting better, so it's that helps a little bit. But also, obviously, the session durations, people aren't sitting staring at that desktop or laptop for as long. They might be out and about, or they're looking at multiple things. They're switching between Facebook and Twitter and the game itself. It might be a statistical view of the game, or it might be actual video stream of the game. So I think the ability to again take the data and the stats and create experiences which one suit the type of screen in the mobile, but mobile as an example, but also that are meeting the various personas of the type of people that are looking at them. And I think that's changing a lot in the sport fan, and the ability for these organisations to again get to sort of capture that next generation of sporting fan who are on mobile. And, when I was a kid, being 18 or 19, well, I wasn't a kid, I guess, when I was 16,
yep.
And following the North Melbourne Kangaroos in the AFL or following Los Angeles Lakers, the various types of digital entertainment and distractions I had at that point, I would say would be 1/50th that of a 16-year-old kid today.
Completely.
So, that's one of the big challenges for organisations like ours and for sports themselves and for media organisations is how they adapt to that. And again, I think, the use of data and the way we creatively present that to that generation of fans. And it's not just the young generation. Obviously, as that young generation comes forward, even people like my 72-year-old mother, who's a diehard North Melbourne fan, now consumes football pretty much 16 hours a day on her iPad or a mobile or a TV or a radio. So that whole experience and fitting the persona of the type of person you're targeting is important. So,
but you've also got this option now that back then is that stats and the what it informs is a form of content in itself.
in that, it can be an endless supply of, well, here's what all the stats have got. What can we present back to the fan in that fan engagement space, whether it's a short form infographic or we've seen a lot of teams are doing these the stats that are moving GIFs or videos that say here's the big stat to bring to draw the people in to say, well, tune in or come back to the app. Yep. And you have to put it out on these platforms, but it is a bit of an endless supply of content, isn't it?
Yeah, the whole virtuous circle in this space is, and it's, in my opinion, not going to slow down. Like, it will, more and more tracking data, more and more statistics. Statistics will be captured automatically via tracking data. There's biometric data. It's just, it definitely won't slow down, and we don't probably even understand today what it will look like in 10 years' time.
The appetite from the fan, or at least following the clicks. They want to see it. Like, there's you put out more content,
yep.
And you put out more content that is of interest to them about their favourite player. They do want to dive in further on it and get that deep dive on it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good point you make about favourite player, and a real focus and strength of ours is what we're doing in the machine learning and AI space, which is ensuring we're delivering an experience to the user that they want.
Yep.
So, at a basic level, your example of the favourite player, if we know that LeBron James is my favourite player, and I'm coming in to experience the sport of basketball at a particular level on a particular device, we don't just know that, whether I've told as a fan the organisation that LeBron James is my favourite player, or whether we've learnt and kept track of what I'm experiencing, then you can dive deeper and deeper and deeper and build up this profile on permission and sort of transparent basis that is just going to make it more and more interesting and engaging for me as a consumer of that sport and of that data. And even as data increases, the specialisation around making sure we're not just spewing out data that I'm not that interested.
Correct.
At me, and it's just becomes I just become swamped with stuff that doesn't necessarily interest me or is relevant to me. But if we understand the type of data I'm interested in, what I do with that data, whether I'm actually someone who has a punt, whether I'm a daily fantasy player, whether I'm just an absolute hardcore fan who is so obsessed by statistics that I do want to know, the more and more we learn, and the more that as computer processing power increases, the ability for systems to constantly drive that experience and learn is a really important aspect.
And that's really going to be where like sports fits into Internet of Things, in that you might have your smartwatch, whatever type of device it is, and you might just say yes, whether it's Steph Curry or Ronaldo or whatever, and you say when they're on fire, I want my watch to alert, and it's plugging that architecture into what your framework is to be able to say you've got to have this system that's able to say, oh, we've got to send an alert to all of these agnostic devices to be able to tell them, oh, they're really interested in a Ronaldo goal or a Ricky Rubio pass or whatever it is to be able to get that total experience.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. I mean, it's some people are a little bit intimidated or scared by the concept of the amount of data and knowledge that various providers have on people, but done the right way, and I think it's only going to continue to enhance the experience for fans and enable them to to engage with the sport, the team, the club that they follow, that they love the most, or that they're arch supporters of. So I think it's all whilst it sounds like a challenging world, and there are a whole range of privacy issues that organisations need to make sure they adhere to, I think it's going to be exciting for the fan and exciting for organisations like us to be part of that new wave and certainly increasing level of complexity. So
we've spoken a lot about the fan engagement side and the fans' point of view. But obviously, not just the film Moneyball, but there's so much development on the professional side. And one of the conversations I have a lot with the digital teams when they're talking with the operations side, the coaching side, they go, "Oh, that's great. We'd love to share it." And the coaches to a certain degree, and quite rightly so, they're still protecting a lot of those stats. How much is the development, because you're seeing both sides, producing stats and visualizations and different interpretations of the stats for the coaches of the world? How much is the development happening on that side for the coaches to say, we want to know these kind of stats, and they're not really getting to consumer level type stuff yet? Is there a lot of development on that side of the fence?
Yeah, definitely, and particularly as tracking systems and data increases, and I think where most of the innovation in this space is, obviously there's more and more data points. No longer do you just, if you use basketball as an example, even going back, I guess, 10 or 15 years, you had basic play-by-play data. Any other data and non-traditional stats were almost hybrids or custom things that individuals sat courtside and recorded on behalf of coaches and performance staff. Now you obviously have a lot of automated stuff, whether that's through wearable tracking, whether it's through computer vision generated tracking. So you literally are getting millions and millions of data points potentially out of a game. Being able to take those data points and analyze them and apply smarts, and it comes back to machine learning and artificial intelligence, being able to take all those data points and, in the same way you make data accessible and understandable to a fan, on a more detailed level, do the same thing for coaches and performance staff. And, then the science to that becomes very much into tactical analytics, and that whole sphere of tactical analytics and teams trying to get an edge on other teams is just going off the charts, obviously, as you no doubt know.
Well, and that's the thing, because they're all pushing to have their own edge, and they come to you as a tech provider and a data analyst of the stats. How much is it? Because the whole idea of data and is for the greater good, and everyone gets access to the stats. But when you're getting into that professional space, they're like, we want to build out this model or this version, and it's just us. How much is that? Is that then the competitiveness for the coaches to get their advantage versus, I guess, more coaches understanding? How does that balance happen?
Yeah, I mean, I think it'll be the same as what it's been over history, just in a more complex environment. Like, historically, obviously, the stats, and if we use basketball again as an example, play-by-play, box score type stats are the history of the sport. Everyone has them, and they can do their own analysis on that. The more strategic, or where coaching staff are trying to get an edge on their own gameplay or other teams' gameplay, they very much want to hold to themselves as much as possible. There are whole organisations in the US, no doubt you're aware of some of them, who are built around providing that service professionally for professional sporting franchises and teams. One of our challenges, and again, it talks to our sort of being a real core technical and data business, which is still our number one focus, rather than a rights business. Whilst we're involved in rights, our core strength is tech and data. One of our really core focuses is being able to provide flexibility in our solutions, flexibility/configurability to enable individual teams and clubs to be able to configure, if you like, systems and make it simple for them to do their own types of analysis, create their own types of tactical scenario-driven type, but all off the real data.
Yep.
And they can really create and feel like they own and hold that stuff and keep it to themselves.
And then it just effectively permeates itself through the industry like it does now, where people go and hire the assistant coach or the lead stats guy because they believe in that model, or they're following the success of someone, and it's pretty much follow the leader.
I think that's just going to continue. There's always going to be a human element to this. The computers are never going to be able to do everything, and they will certainly help. And obviously, from a tactical point of view, make it easier and easier. But actually, what you're doing is getting to a finer and finer and finer level of performance analysis. and the ability to look at things differently, look at things much faster, look at things in real time, look at things even from a replay point of view on a much faster basis. So that whole space is just explode. I don't actually think computers are going to decrease the staff. You know, some people would say, yeah, the computers are going to do all this stuff for us.
You still need someone to drive it and push it in the right direction. And that's why there's the rise of Sloan Conference and things like that. To seeing how people can push the tech to come out with, because in the end it's big data. You've got all the data there. You've still got to make the interpretations of it and get the results out of it. One of the questions I wanted to ask you, especially from a genius, sports and bet genius, and the fact that you're in the gambling space, and integrity is a really big part of your business. Do you want to take us through why that is and some of the things that why it's such a big part of what you're doing? Yeah,
it's a good point. I mean, if we come back to our model, and when Mark Locke, the CEO of the group and at the time CEO of Bet Genius, and myself decided to merge the businesses and turn it into a sport-facing business, that was all around us doing the right thing by sport and going down a path whereby we absolute core to our business model is sport partnerships. One of the key things for sports and key challenges for sport, most sporting organisations want to take advantage of the commercial upside that comes from betting. That's a reality.
Yep.
But they want to do it in a way where they retain control, where integrity is really at the forefront. So fortunately for us, being a technical and data business, we're in a very, very good position to have a division of the business which constantly monitors betting activity worldwide, and then monitors that alongside what we know the various patterns or odds, if you like, in a particular match or game should be. So we don't claim to be the police in that situation. We're very much working in partnership with the sport to identify potential discrepancies or potential issues with them. And what that enables the sport to do, obviously, is not only involve the various authorities that may be required if there are issues, and we all know in the world of sport there are definitely issues that occasionally come to the media's attention. It also helps from an education point of view, and backing right up, the very first thing we help these sports with is education and understanding, and helping them put in place the various policies and procedures, monitoring of which is one of those things, to ensure that the sport is well and truly covered, and that all various role players in the sport are covered, whether that's officials, whether it's in terms of referees or umpires, whether it's players, whether it's coaching staff, anyone who has access to information, right through to player agreements in terms of not being allowed to bet and those types of things. So, it's got a legal angle to it. It's got a technical and monitoring angle to it, education, and then I guess assisting the sport to be able to, if something does go wrong, to be able to work with the various authorities to make sure that they understand what's going on, do what they need to do about it, and help make sure it doesn't happen again.
Yeah, so I mean, in its basis, it's making sure that what you're putting out from a data point of view is right, and then protects the sport if they move down the path of monetising their rights via gambling and those kind of things, to be able to have some of those assurances in place. And because you are helping capture the stats and pushing them out, and then people will be consuming them, it allows you to have a separate team keeping an eye on all of those things.
Yeah, it's a core component, whether or not you believe in betting, and there are different views around the world, whether or not you believe in sports betting. The reality is whether a sport adopts it and embraces it or not, whether a country regulates or not, the reality is sports betting does take place.
Yep.
By providing this level of service to sport, it enables them to embrace it in a very transparent way, where they can be doing everything that can be done to ensure that it's done with integrity, I guess. Is, we have a very large division within the business that looks after this. It works closely with both the Bet Genius division as well as with the sport-facing division as well as with the legal division. So it all comes together to really, in a very positive way, ensure that that sports know how to undertake this. In terms of regulated markets worldwide, was another key factor for my business when I merged with Bet Genius was making sure we were going to partner with an organisation who only dealt in regulated markets. The world of sport is definitely regulating betting over time. More and more countries and regions are choosing to regulate, particularly online sports betting, recognising that it does take place, and they're much better off to be able to control that at a government level as well as the sport level. So that's another important aspect for us, ensuring that everything we do in educating the sports, that by partnering with our organisation, they won't be their data, if you like, or where they're earning their commercial revenue sources from won't be through markets or through individuals who are not allowed to be betting. So the individuals who are betting in unregulated markets or illegal markets, and then also organisations we might deal with to ensure we're not supplying data to organisations who are not operating in a regulated market in a legal fashion.
Okay.
So it just adds to the whole integrity of the sport. And, sport, the people running that sport can literally say that they're doing it in a transparent way. They're doing it with the right governance and controls. The sport's benefiting. They're looking after the participants. Everyone's been educated, and it flows from there.
It does lead me on to my last question around, stats. Recently, I chatted with Rail Sood from Unicorn, which is esports and esports gambling, and you're looking in and forming more and more partnerships in the esports space, and I guess seeing the appetite for stats and what the esports fan wants and that kind of thing. What's been some of the lessons, and what have you guys learned about the esports space so far, just in getting into that market?
First and foremost, I don't claim to be an esports expert. It's certainly a different generation. It is a very important part of our business, though, and we have a great team. And it would be worth me hooking up with Maritz, who runs that division for us. But esports is a fascinating space. Obviously, there's billions and billions of dollars being invested into it as a sport. Sporting franchises around the world are adopting franchises of their own in esports competitions and leagues. From a statistics point of view, obviously, it's all there, being a computer-generated game and experience. But even that said, it has shown me, certainly, that there are always different ways to present data that mean more to different people. So if I sat down and watched a Twitch stream of a particular game online, and I sit there and I'm just watching it, in a lot of ways quite hard for me to follow what's actually going on. We've done a lot of work with various score centres and for both media and for betting organisations that actually bring some of the summary stats out that are more meaningful to various types of users, whether I'm a hardcore gamer or whether I'm just an interested...
But the stats are a bit of a common language for the sports fans. So, when you've got pro sports teams, like the Adelaide Crows buying esports teams and, professional teams in Europe and in the States buying them, as they're potentially introducing new fans to esports, there's a big, strong fan base already there. But stats is a bit of a common language to go, well, I know what a triple-double is in basketball, or I know that I track points and rebounds or whatever it is in the sports that I follow. So if I can see that, this gamer is having these kind of stats and here's the fantasy point score and that kind of thing, it can help. It is that education process that sort of can help fans sort of come across from one to the other.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Different types of stats, actually. One comes to mind, which is commonly used, which I probably don't want to use in terms of number of particular actions in a game. But yeah, stats there's no doubt about stats being a common language. That's why there's different markets where esports has taken off quicker, where the consumption of esports by by fans, if you like, has accelerated fast in other markets. The US is one, obviously. Asia is another. And I think that engagement with digital environment, the engagement with data and how data is represented and how stats is consumed and represented probably almost goes hand in hand with that. So it's it's definitely an emerging space and one that we're heavily invested into. Got lots of good partnerships in the space, and it's exciting. I still don't claim to have my head fully around it.
I'll put my hand up there. As much as I'm trying to learn as much around the esports space myself, but yeah, it's definitely a developing area, and I think I guess the stat story is one that's going to help them.
Yeah.
In just finishing up, just takes a bit through some of the profile of some of the people working behind the scenes at Genius. So if you got, I'm assuming you've got your data geeks that dive in on the data. You've got your techies that are diving in and making sure, because you've got a lot of pipes that have to be connected and working. What are the kind of people behind the scenes at Genius?
It's a very good question that I've never been asked before. And it is interesting to think about. If I talk about Genius Sports being across sport and betting, a couple of key guys who started with both organisations in the early days in Bet Genius, one of the geniuses, I guess you would say, behind Bet Genius. It's a very, very, very smart, big brain mathematician, loves sport, very much understood gambling and odds, was able to apply all those smarts to creating algorithms that really led the market and enabled bookmakers to offer better services to their customers, and really led the way in terms of what we were able to do with automated trading and outsourced trading for bookmakers. In the sports side of the business, which is where I've come from, obviously, similarly, absolute technical propeller heads, some of whom didn't even necessarily have a massive interest in sport, but probably today, now after 15 or 20 years doing it, know more about sports stats than most people globally. So there's those real, being a technical business, most of our resources, from a percentage point of view, are tech. So whether that's development, whether that's guys, data guys, I guess if you like, infrastructure guys. Then if you go right to the other side of it, sport is very much a relationship-based industry. Certainly from the sports side of the business, been going 20 years, the relationships go sort of very wide and very deep across the core sports that we deal with. And that's football, as in soccer, basketball, literally from the most grassroots basketball league in the eastern suburbs of Melbourne right through to the pinnacle of the sport and everything in between, and some really, really key people in all parts of the organisation who have driven those relationships over many years, and without them would be very, very difficult to grow the business at the rate that we've grown, which is, I think the latest count was about 1,000 staff and 17 offices globally, and a lot of that growth's happened in the last 2 to 3 years. So the relationship's certainly pretty key to it. Across 1,000 people, lots of different types of personalities, but I would still say at the core of it, sport relationships, sport knowledge, a real understanding of the sports is a key differentiator for us. We have a lot of people who absolutely get everything there is to get about basketball, about football, about volleyball, about all the core sports that we do. And, if you can build relationships, but you can't build meaningful relationships in the world of sport unless you really understand the various things about sport that make it tick. And if you're a technology provider to sport and claim to be experts in the space of analytics or competition management or fan engagement, unless you really understand the fan or you really understand the coach or you really understand the sport's pretty hard. So, that's another core strength and, pretty key in terms of some of our recruitment policies.
Terrific. So I want to finish off with the closing 5. Do you remember the first sports event you ever attended?
Professionally or as a child?
As a child? Do you remember your first?
The very first sporting event I remember, which will mean more to your Australian listeners than the international ones, was out at Arden Street in North Melbourne. and it was a North Melbourne. I cannot even remember who they played that day, but I do remember the scoreboard, which was a big old thing where they did it manually, was set on fire.
Oh, the scoreboard was no elephant. Arden Street was famous for the elephant running across the field at one point.
It was a little bit after that, I think, but yeah.
Yeah. You've over your journey and going to working with different sports. Do you have a favourite food memory or a go-to food at a sports event?
One of my fond memories was attending the FIBA 2006 World Championship in Japan.
Yep.
My oldest daughter at the time, who's very much a greenie, was in 2006. She turned 24 today, actually, so that makes her... she wasn't all that old back in 2006, but when I told her I was sitting down with some key clients in Tokyo around the World Championship eating raw whale, I wasn't very popular.
No,
I didn't have respect for the client, but yeah, I've been lucky enough over the last 20 years to travel the world, lots and lots of different sporting events. That's probably one that just instantly sprung to mind, probably more so because of the grief I've copped since from my daughter.
I can imagine. What's the first app you open in the morning?
I'm actually almost embarrassed to admit it, but it's Outlook.
Outlook. Oh, wow. On your phone. Yeah, I would be embarrassed too. As someone who
Outlook followed by WhatsApp.
Okay.
It's actually an interesting question because obviously now having 17 offices around the world, big office in LA, big office in London, big office in Melbourne, a few in Europe. It's definitely a 24/7 business.
It is. Is there someone that you follow, whether it be online or you read, that you think the Sports Geek listeners should follow and why? If there's someone you've been reading or that keeps you up to date?
Yeah, I mean, not necessarily from a key. I mean, I do just read a lot of stuff, and actually, I rely on a couple of guys at work. One of whom you know very well,
Umberto
Righetti, who is one of the most well-read guys I know in the world of sport and digital. Yep. And he certainly sends me very, very good summaries of stuff I need to stay across. But I think at a sport exec level, I pay an enormous amount of attention to what Adam Silver, Commissioner of the NBA, says. I think he's a very, very intelligent person, very in tune with the world of sport, very in tune with various regulation, and very, very savvy commercially.
And he does seem to have that stronger future focus than a lot of other, sports leaders.
Yeah, very much so, and that is very refreshing in the world of sport. And you only have to see the way the NBA is going to and has tracked. Obviously, David Stern was an amazing commissioner and took the sport to amazing new heights, and it's good to see Adams continuing that, and very much with the future of the sport and well-being of the sport. And it's also fantastic to see how they're engaging now with the International Federation, FIBA, as well. And I think that's a very visionary thing where, if you're the NBA, it would be very easy to not do that, obviously, because you are the biggest and most successful league in the world. But for me personally, having been involved in basketball for 20 years, it's super exciting to see the way those organisations are working together now.
Yeah, definitely. Last one, if you had to choose a social media platform as your MVP, what one would be the MVP?
Look, I may just have to go on performance, and again, maybe I'd be embarrassed to admit this, but I'd probably say Facebook.
I don't think there's any embarrassment. It is often nominated just from a point, I guess, size and the data that it's capturing and the ad platform that's allowing teams to. They've
got a lot of bases covered, not just the, technically they're doing some amazing stuff, and there's some of the thought leadership in that space is amazing in that organisation.
Yeah, and it will be interesting to see how how their relationship with sports continues to develop over the next couple of years.
That's a very interesting one, as will be with Google and all the other big players.
Oh, definitely. Where can people Where can people find you on the internet, Nick?
Geniussports.com is our commercial website, obviously, for the group. Me personally, Nick Maywald from LinkedIn.
Nick Maywald on LinkedIn, and we'll link to you there. Thank you very much for coming to the office and chatting about Genius.
Thanks very much. Appreciate it. Enjoyed it.
Sign up for Sports Geek News at sportsgeekhq.com/sign up now.
Thanks again to Nick Maywald. You can go and check out all things Genius Sports at geniussports.com. And as I said in the opener, thanks to Umberto for setting up the interview. Appreciate the chat. Being able to catch Nick while he was briefly in Melbourne before heading overseas once again. I did want to, I announced it last week on last week's show. I just want to give you a bit of an update. The Facebook Audiences Guide, and it's pretty much the steps that I take clients through to understand their data and how to use Facebook to better leverage their data and better understand their fans. Had a really terrific response. You can download that at sportsgeekhq.com/FB data or data, depending on which part of the world you are in. It'll be linked up in the show notes. It takes you through how to build out web audiences to understand why the pixel is important and understand what your audience is doing from a website visitor point of view. Then also leveraging the data that you may have captured, whether they be tickets, ticket buyers, season ticket buyers, prospects. What do they look like? What do their demographics look like on Facebook? And then also leveraging what your digital team is doing in terms of content. What video are they putting out? Who's watching those videos? And then who is engaged with the pages? So just building up some of those base audiences are really vital to get a good grip of what Facebook offers, and then also what it can do, going forward. So go to sportsgeekhq.com/FB data. Completely blown away by how many downloads it had in the first couple of hours of its release. And it completely blew up on LinkedIn. So for those of you who've already downloaded it and passed it on to colleagues, appreciate it. At the moment, we're keeping it open as a free download. That may change. So if you haven't downloaded it yet, please do so. We might shut it down in a couple of weeks. At the moment, just to give you a bit of background of what we're doing, we're very much in pitch deck and rate card building mode with Sports Geek Campaigns clients. So if you need help building out your rate card and understanding what the value of all your digital assets are, or you want to punch up your digital playbook to drive more revenue, or you're just lacking resources to actually execute sponsored digital campaigns, or if you're just sick of crappy campaigns being thrown to your team from external agencies that don't quite understand your fan base and don't quite understand the sports fan market. That's where the Sports Geek Campaigns excels. So simply go to sportsgeekcampaigns.com to book in for a time for a chat, or flick me an email, Sean at sportsgeekhq.com, working with a few different clients around the world in building out this initiative. And once you've got your digital playbook up and running, your sales guys can just go and sell and bring in more revenue. So go to sportsgeekcampaigns.com to book in for a time. I will wrap up this podcast as I said in the interview. I interviewed Nick prior to the AFL and NRL Grand Finals, and they were run and won last week. So congratulations to Richmond in the AFL and the Melbourne Storm in the NRL, and obviously commiserations to the Adelaide Crows in the AFL and the North Queensland Cowboys in the NRL. Both were good games. Had great stories, as most games do, and a lot of the chatter, definitely here in Australia, was the battle of the pre-match and post-match entertainment, with the AFL coming out with the Killers, who did an amazing job, and then the NRL came out with Macklemore, who also did an amazing job. So I thought they were both excellent. So stay tuned for a great sounds of the game at the end of this, where after the match, Richmond for Jack Rewald actually jumped up on stage with the Killers to sing Mr. Brightside in full playing gear. So a quality story. There's some links in there on how that was pulled together, but stay tuned. Jack's not a great singer, but what an amazing moment for him after winning a premiership, then getting to sing with the Killers in front of 40 or 50,000 fans. So until next episode, my name is Sean Callanan, and you've been listening to Sports Geek.
Join over 1,000 sports business executives in Sports Biz Slack. Go to sportsgeekhq.com/Slack.
Please leave a review on iTunes. Go to sportsgeekhq.com/iTunes.
Find out how to drive between $8,000 and $30,000 in profit for each digital campaign you sell sponsors. Check out sportsgeekcampaigns.com. Just like Jimmy Butler, you can call Sean anytime at 614-407-0407-200.